Welcome to Whisper Vase USA, the podcast where we listen, we relax, and we get sleepy. I'm your host, Tom. And thank you so much for tuning in tonight. We meet a friendly Labrador named Rosa, who lives at a hotel after spending time with her owners and greeting the guests. It will be time for a nap. Her favorite spot is a windowsill in the sun overlooking a peaceful canal. And this story is actually inspired by a real dog in Belgium who took his naps in a scenic spot till he was popular with tourists, and he became known as the most photographed dog in Bruges. You might wonder why a sleeping dog was such a memorable moment, but perhaps it's that he simply helped people understand the pleasure of slowing down. Let's prepare for tonight's story by reminding ourselves of how it feels to have a great night's sleep. Take a deep breath in relaxation before sleep. Hold at the top and slowly exhale back out. As you continue to breathe at an easy, relaxed pace, try thinking back to a time when you had a really great night's sleep, one of those sleeps that just comes to you without any effort or trepidation and makes you feel all the better when you wake up in the morning. Where were you when you experienced that great sleep? Was there something about the bed or the space around you that made you feel deeply relaxed and comfortable? Music. Perhaps it was the events of your day that left you with a luxuriously calm and sleepy feeling, where laying down and letting your head sink into the pillow becomes irresistible in your mind. Take yourself back to that time. Try to reconnect with that sense of deep and easy relaxation. Enjoy the feeling of comfort that you have right now as your mind reminisces music, and remember how you felt when you woke up after that sleep. Perhaps you continue to feel deeply relaxed and you approach the morning gently and calmly, or of course, you may have felt completely full of life, teeming with positive energy, ready to make the most of the day ahead. That's the power of a good night's sleep. And though not all of us experience it quite as often as we might like, when we do sleep well and wake up refreshed, the experience is something that we can cherish and appreciate. Music. I'm hopeful that you'll have a night full of deep, rejuvenating sleep. So without any pressure, simply follow the sound of my voice in this charming story about Rosa, a Labrador who knows exactly how to slow down and rest. Music. The coziest, sleepy story. Music. Rosa the Labrador wakes up slowly. She opens her eyes and then stretches out her body, so her back and limbs become looser. When she awakes after a long sleep, she's so relaxed that even her golden fur feels softer than usual. Music. She's lying on the bed of her owners, a couple in their 50s. The man and woman get up early in the morning to work at the hotel, which is where they live, and as soon as one of them gets up, leaving an open spot on the bed, so too does Rosa. She stands up from the cushion on the floor and jumps onto the king-sized bed of her owners. Although her own bed is comfortable too, she'd rather be up here. Music. The mattress is thicker and it's so warm and cozy. She loves breathing in the scent of her owner. When there's enough space, she likes to curl up right in the middle of the bed, where it's still warm from their body heat. Music. This morning the man got up earlier, leaving his partner to have a lie-in. Now the woman is finally ready to wake up too, but Rosa doesn't want her to leave until they've had their usual morning ritual. She nestles up beside the woman and then rolls onto her back, waiting for belly rubs. For the next few minutes, Rosa lies there with her eyes closed, enjoying the warmth of the bed and the relaxing sensation of her belly being rubbed. It's like a soothing massage. She could spend the whole morning like this. Rosa gets a final affectionate scratch behind the ear before the woman gets up and gets ready to begin her day. Although Rosa wishes her owner would stay a little longer at least, she now has the entire bed to herself. Music. She stretches out luxuriantly, taking up all the space and absorbing the warmth. Music. Her owners haven't always allowed her to climb onto the bed. Long ago, when she was still a puppy, the man would often say no. But as soon as he left the room, the woman would allow Rosa to snuggle up beside her. And now, years later, Rosa is allowed into the bed every morning. It's part of her daily routine, like the belly rubs and walks In her afternoon nap on the windowsill, Rosa drifts off to sleep again, dreaming of the nap she'll take later when she's not sleeping. She's thinking about sleeping. She's an old dog now, and she spends most of her time napping or relaxing on the most comfortable surface she can find. She no longer has the desire to play for hours as she did when she was a puppy, and her walks are shorter now, but other things remain unchanged, like her appetite. After dozing for a while, she wakes up again and becomes aware of her stomach rumbling. She knows she can't expect breakfast in bed, so she'll have to get up and head downstairs to the kitchen. Music. Rosa stretches contentedly one last time and then climbs down from the bed onto the plush carpet. As soon as she leaves the bedroom, she sniffs and catches the scent of her breakfast. Music. Rosa's nose is incredibly powerful. Her sense of smell is thousands of times more sensitive than a human's, so when she sniffs the air, it's not only breakfast that she smells. She's also aware of countless other odors. There's the fresh, clean smell of the carpet. Then there's one of the hotel guests' perfume, which still lingers in the air even though the woman has already gone further away. Rosa can also smell coffee and the familiar scent of both her owners' music. She doesn't mind them being out of sight. As long as she can smell them, she likes knowing that they're nearby. Music. But as she continues to sniff, she realizes that she can sense something else. It's faint but unmistakable. With her nose to the ground, she follows the scent all the way down the hall and down the winding carpeted stairs. When she reaches the hotel reception, the smell gets stronger. She's getting closer and closer, and there behind a potted plant on the floor is a piece of cheese. Her owners often leave little treats like this hidden around the hotel. Music. It never takes her long to find them. Rosa devours the piece of strong salty cheese in one bite and then heads towards the kitchen. The cheese was delicious, but now she's even hungrier. Music. After a hearty breakfast of kibble and a drink of fresh cool water, Rosa is ready for the next part of her morning routine. She likes to follow her owner as he goes round the hotel, up and down the stairs and along every hallway. Although she doesn't understand what he's doing, she's happy to keep him company. She likes to think that she's helping in some way every now and then she gets rewarded with a pat and sometimes even a treat. Music. This walk around the hotel also gives Rosa the chance to investigate some more smells. She sniffs the walls and carpet and tries to detect any subtle changes. She's curious about new smells. Once she remembers there was a family who seemed to have traveled from far away. They looked tired standing in reception next to a huge pile of bags and cases. When Rosa came to greet them, she smelled so many wonderful new scents. One of them was a dusty, earthy aroma, but it was nothing like the smells she was used to. This one was all mixed up with unfamiliar herbal fragrances and something warm and smoky. She was so fascinated by these new smells that she stayed right next to the guests, sniffing their shoes and their luggage. At last, one of Rosa's owners called to her from behind the reception desk, but the guests had been kind and friendly. Rosa remembered that to everyone who came to the hotel was always happy to see her. Music. Rosa continues on her morning rounds, following the man into the dining room. On the ground floor, it's a beautiful, airy room that smells of flowers as well as the remnants of breakfast. Rosa can still smell the warm, comforting scent of coffee and toast, but what interests her about this room is not the lingering aroma of breakfast or even the leftover crumbs on the carpet. For Rosa, the best thing about this room is the window. Beneath the large central window is a cushioned bench, which is where the guests sometimes sit. Just above the bench is a broad windowsill made of wood, also covered with a large cushion. This is Rosa's spot. She follows her owner as he kneels on the bench and opens the windows outwards to let in the fresh morning air. It's a beautiful spring day, and the air still feels a little crisp. Rosa will come back here later in the early afternoon when the sun is shining directly on the window. She'll enjoy a nap in the warmth of its light, but for now she can't resist a quick look out of the window. The man moves to the side, so there's space for her. She joins him on the bench placing her front paws outside on the windowsill music. The view from this spot is one of the best in the town. It looks directly out onto a canal, and sometimes boats pass right below across the canal. Is an old ivy-covered stone wall. The tops of the trees are visible in the opposite garden. There are leaves rustling in the wind and birds twittering in the branches. Music further along is a red brick building with open windows. That belonged to a bakery at this time in the morning. Rosa can still smell the delicious scent of the bread and pastries fresh from the oven. Her powerful nose can distinguish each individual ingredient. She could list them all: the smell of butter, sugar, honey, and caramel. Then there's chocolate, cinnamon, almonds, even roasted pear. She sniffs wistfully and then turns towards her owner. His eyes are closed and he's breathing in, deeply devouring the fragrances. When he opens his eyes, he looks at her and smiles. He strokes her affectionately, his hand moving slowly from the top of her head, then right down her neck and back. She loves the warm, comforting weight of his hand. She wags her tail happily and rubs her head against him to show her appreciation later. She hopes he'll take her for a walk. They usually walk through the town center, or they go to the nearby park so Rosa can meet other dogs, but she understands that her owner has to work now. She can keep herself busy in the meantime and see what's happening in the garden. At the back of the hotel is a peaceful walled garden. There are rows of neat flower beds on all sides, an old oak tree, and a patio with a bench. Music. Rosa knows every inch of this garden. All the sights and smells are familiar. She has fond memories of her days as a puppy, playing on the grass and learning how to sit, stay, and roll over. Music. Her owners would give her treats or make a game of hiding them in the garden. Music. As Rosa wanders across the lawn, sniffing the plants and the flowers, she catches the scent of one of her owners. The woman has come outside to sit in the sun and read the newspaper. Music. Rosa comes to sit beside her for a while, content to spend time in her company. Music. She always enjoys the presence of other people, but she's happiest when she's with her owners. Music. The comforting familiarity of their scent is so calming that it sometimes makes her feel sleepy. She could fall asleep right here on the patio. Music. Then Rosa's owner leans towards her and scratches her gently behind the ears. It has an instant effect. Rosa feels so deeply relaxed that she lies down on the warm stone and rests her head between her paws. Then she closes her eyes and drifts into a peaceful sleep. A little while later, Rosa is awakened by a distant ringing sound. The bell at the reception desk. This means some guests have arrived, and the woman will have to go to greet them. Rosa likes to meet the new arrivals. She yawns, stretches, and then follows the woman into the building, her tail wagging. A couple of young men are waiting at reception, and they smile as soon as they see Rosa. One of the men bends down to stroke her using both hands. He scratches her head, ears, and neck with genuine affection. This man must have a dog of his own too. Rosa can detect the scent of another female dog on the man's clothes and skin. She also recognizes the smell of her local park, the familiar fragrance of leaves, earth, and daffodils. The man must have walked through the park on his way to the hotel and brought the aroma with him. Music. Rosa's understanding of time is closely linked to her sense of smell. Music. Her idea of the past comes from the strength of a scent. Music. The lingering smell of the park tells her that the man has been there recently, but it's not as strong as the aromas of the present as well as the past and present. Rosa can use her sense of smell to recognize the future. Sometimes she knows who's around the corner or what's about to happen just from the scent as it's carried through the air. This is her way of understanding the world. Once she's identified all the scents that the new guests have brought with them, she's happy to enjoy the moment. She sits on the floor with her eyes closed, allowing the man to stroke her head and neck over and over again. A simple interaction like this is one of her greatest pleasures in life. It fills her with a sense of blissful relaxation that spreads right through her body. She wags her tail slowly, sweeping it across the floor. After the new guests have checked in, Razor decides to return to the dining room she can smell cooking from the nearby kitchen, as her owner is preparing a delicious garlicky dish. Usually the cooking aromas coincide with the sunlight reaching the dining room. Window Roses looking forward to having a rest. On the windowsill and basking in the sun music, she crosses the dining room, stopping to greet a couple of guests on the way, then using the bench as a step. She climbs up onto the windowsill and lies down on the large soft cushion that's positioned by the open window. Most of the cushion is inside the room, but part of it sticks outside in the sunshine music. Rosa's owners know that this is exactly how she likes it. Rosa stretches, arching her back, and then settles down on the windowsill. She makes herself comfortable. With her head resting on the cushion between her front paws, the rest of her body is also supported by the soft feather cushion, which was a present from her owners many years ago. Music. When she sniffs the fabric, Rosa can still detect the original scent of the material, a delightful fragrance of wood, herbs, and flowers. This floral smell is unlike anything in Rosa's hometown, so the cushion must have come from far away. Once the scent seemed strange and exotic, but after all these years of napping on the cushion, it now feels wonderfully comforting and familiar. And it's mixed with other smells too. Rosa can recognize the lavender scent of the laundry detergent, the distinctive aroma of her owners, and even her own smell. Music under the gentle rays of the spring sunshine, these smells are heightened music. In fact, everything seems more vivid in the warmth and brightness of the sun. Even the colors of the canal appear more intense. Rosa can't perceive the same spectrum of color as her human owners, but that doesn't mean she's colorblind. Rosa sees the world in soft shades of yellow and gray with tinges of blue. Music. When she gazes at the canal beneath her window, she also sees the beauty of the sun-dappled water, but to Rosa, the water is not blue or green, it's a pale gray that shifts into golden yellow sparkling. When the sun hits music, she watches the movement of the water with interest too. Depending on the size and shape of the ripples, she tries to guess the cause. It could be the wind or a fish swimming beneath the surface. When the ripples become waves, it means a boat is on its way. The ripples in the water beneath the window are gradually becoming bigger and bigger. Rosa is tempted to lift her head so she can see the boat, but she's so comfortable that she doesn't want to move. She waits until it drifts into view. A small motorboat stops just below the window. There's a group of people on board smiling and taking photos. They're talking too, but the only word Rosa recognizes is her own name, repeated several times. Rosa is famous in this town. The boats often pass along this stretch of the canal, so people can see Rosa relaxing on the windowsill. Rosa doesn't quite understand what's going on, but she's happy to watch the boats come and go. They're part of the scenery, like the birds singing in the branches of the trees, or the water lapping gently against the stone walls. Music. She sighs contentedly, making a soft huffing sound, and closes her eyes. The sun is growing warmer, and she can feel herself getting sleepier. By the second, the gentle heat of the sun is like a caress. It's almost as soothing as being stroked by her owners. Later, she'll go for another wander around the hotel to find out what her owners are up to, but for now, she's happy just where she is. Music. In this moment, there's nowhere else she'd rather be. She's ready for her long afternoon nap. The warm sun, the comforting scents, and the soothing melody of the birdsong are slowly lulling her into a state of total relaxation. Soon, she's no longer aware of her surroundings. With a final happy sigh, she drifts serenely into sleep.